Alright, so I want to talk about some more advanced text tools. With the table of contents video, I talked a little bit about using tabs and leaders. Now I want to talk more about some other really less known things you can do with text tools. So to start with, let's say I wanted an underline under here. I could obviously draw a line like such, and then actually let's put color to it so you can see it, and then I would have a line, but that line would always be separate from the text box. So like if I move the text box, I have to remember to select the line. Yes, I could group them, but the better way to do it, or the way that makes the most sense in the long term, is to actually add what's called a paragraph rule. And these are things you can, any of these tools I'm going to show you today are things you can build into paragraph styles so that you can easily apply them multiple times in your document. So I'm going to highlight the text. I'm going to come over here to the paragraph palette, and then I'm going to click on the 3 lines, or what's called a hamburger menu. And I'm going to get a bunch of options. So the first one I want to go to talk about is paragraph rules. And this is going to give us a panel, and we have the option of doing a rule above or below, so we're not limited to one. Sometimes you want so in the one video I showed my thesis book, which had lines for people to sign, that actually used a rule above. Sometimes you might do both because you want, editing, but for right now I'm going to show you with below. And then make sure you check your preview box just so you can see what you're doing. Once you get used to it, maybe you won't need it as much, but I think it's easier while you're learning to actually see it. So I'm going to go ahead and click rule on, and you'll notice the line is like literally basically the equivalent of the baseline for the type. So I probably don't want that. So to start with, I'm going to click the offset, and I'm going to move that down, and I can move it as far as I want. I also can move it, interestingly, in the negative. I'm not sure why I would want to do that, but I can. So I'm going to go ahead and pick just a place I like. And some other options here. So number one, you can change the weight. You can make it, if you wanted a thicker line, or if you wanted thinner than that, it's up to you. I'm going to put it back to like 2 point. It looks good to me. You also have all the access to the different types of lines you can make in InDesign. So if you don't just want a solid line, you want a dotted line, you can put that there. You can, anything you can select, but I'm going to prefer solid. You also can select the color, so either matching the text, or if you wanted a different color, so maybe I want it to be green. You can set whether the width is to the text or to the overall column. In this case, I'd probably want column. You can also set indents, so if for some reason you wanted it not the whole way, and there's reasons for that, like you have a tabbing system or something. And you can also, if you go negative, again, it can extend beyond the column. So, but I'm going to put this back to 0. Same with the right indent. You can shorten it and shrink it. Again, that might have more to do with, like, for example, if I'm making the form and I want, just the text for part of it, that might be an option, but I want it longer than the actual text. So that's how we can add a paragraph rule to it. And once you have it here, you could obviously go to paragraph styles, say make new style. And if we look at paragraph rules, we'll see those, if we go to the below option, we'll see those settings in place. You could, so any of the things I'm doing here, you can actually set up in here directly, or you can take the technique of highlighting the text and just saying new style. Either one is fine. But I'm going to undo that because I want to show you another option. So again, I'm going to highlight this table of contents. This time in the paragraph panel, I'm going to go to paragraph borders and shading. So I can customize this as much as I want to. So I'm going to click on for borders. Notice it puts a box literally around, basically based on the column. So I can start with some of the same options. I can determine if I want all the borders the same or I want them the different. Maybe like you want just part of it. I'm not sure why, but I could uncheck this and I could set top to 0 but leave the other 2. I don't know why I'd want to do that, but I can. And again, I can control the thickness. I can make it as thick or as thin as I want. I can also, again, control what kind of lines. I can control the color. Alright, and then I can control tints. I can control the line results. I can also control like corner size if I wanted rounded corners. Oh, so it's that. Sorry. So let's go to rounded. You can get tricky with this. So if you, some of you, that might be useful. I can also control the offset. So how far it is from the text, that can be useful. I can control edges. I can control the width. So maybe I just put this around the text again. I have a whole range of options. There's also under here the shading option, which allows you to do a variety, so you can add this sort of highlight to it. And it's doing like overprint, so you have options there too with that. Right now I don't really want the shading. I'm just going to leave the border for the sake of this, but you have those options. Again, if I were to go to paragraph style, say new paragraph style, under paragraph border, I'll see all those border settings. So that's an option for you. But that's an easy way to create an object that actually will move with it. So if I move the text box, it goes with it. Another thing a lot of people like to do is to have like colored boxes that they want to attach type to. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my box. So think about like in a textbook or a magazine, you might see like a colored box as a call out. So I'm going to set a color, and then I'm going to go ahead and use the type tool, and I'm going to click on this. So now this type will be attached to the colored box. You could obviously put the color behind the text box, but sometimes you make one thing. Just showing you either way is an acceptable option. So I'm going to go ahead and type some text. Copy this sentence a couple times so we have more text in here. I'm going to actually make it 10 point. Alright, so how do I, I don't want this to the edges. Could I do it? Yes, but should I do it? Absolutely not. So let's go ahead. This time I'm going to select it, and I'm going to either control click or right click. Control click works on a Mac. If you haven't set up both of your, because you can on a Mac set up basically a left and a right click. If you have a PC though, obviously right click, but we want to find text frame options, or Command B, Control B on a PC. So this is going to give you a number of options. Again, you probably want to preview it just so you can see. So to start with, I'm just going to talk about spacing. So we can actually build in some spacing so that it's not quite so close to the text edges. Whether you do it uniform or you do it individually is up to you. You also can change and say like your type's going to be centered in the box. So this takes care of vertical centering, or vertical top, bottom, whatever you want. The actual text itself alignment is still done through the paragraph panel, but this controls, so we can do bottom. We also could do justify, so it automatically spaces it out so our text fills vertically. Or top is usually the default, because that's the most common, but let's say I want it centered. I can also look at if I wanted to do insert column rules. I can get really technical. There's baseline options. If you're working with footnotes, this is also an option. So for right now, I'm just going to say okay to this. Again, this is something that I could add to my paragraph styles so it does it automatically. The last thing I wanted to show you, while most people, like I've shown you how to make text columns manually by, placing text and doing that. Another thing you can do though is just make a giant blob of text. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set this smaller so I have more text, and I'm going to go ahead and just insert some filler place text because I'm demoing this. However, you could very well put your own content in here first. So I have this large text box that's going the whole page. It's spanning all my columns, but I don't want to set type like this. So just as a reference to, don't set type all the way across the page. You want to actually use columns. This is too hard. It's too far to read as an English speaker. So now I want to actually add columns. So I'm going to, again, control click or right click to get to text frame options. So the one I didn't do last time was up here. It was columns. So you can set the number of columns. You also can do it with fixed width, flexible. You can get into more technical. So I'm going to go ahead and do 3, and it's defaulting to the same gutter I have, and it's showing you what the width is, because you could set width or you can set number. I'm just setting number because it makes more sense. We could balance columns, doesn't really matter here. But if I did want to do like insert column rules, I want a line between these columns, and it can just be built in. Maybe I make it a little bit thinner. So that just automatically gives you this element, and it'll all move together. But it's a really easy way to actually format columns without having to necessarily, like, they're still aligning to my grid, but I didn't have to do that, you know, place. This is just another option for you to make you aware. I'm just trying to teach you all the possibilities that there are. And this isn't everything. I think one other thing, I don't know if I talked about this in the other video, if you do want to drop cap, which isn't necessarily done in a brand guide, but looking ahead to your final project, it might make sense for that. We can either highlight all the text or just that letter, it doesn't matter. We can come over here to the paragraph and the option down here. So if you roll over it, it'll say drop cap number of lines, meaning, so 1 line is obviously normal, and then we can do 2. It's going to do it at the start of a paragraph, every like supposed start of paragraph. So you'd probably only want to actually highlight that first paragraph and then go ahead and say how many lines you want it to match. You can also, if you want more than 1 letter, you can specify that. But usually a drop cap is just 1 letter, but that's a nice easy way to put in a drop cap. I wouldn't say you really need that for this assignment, but just to show you that it's an option for you. I think the biggest and hardest thing with learning any of these programs is knowing what's in there and how it can be used. So trying to highlight for you, like, you probably wouldn't have guessed with the tabs that you could get the dotted lines and have everything line up perfectly. Like, these are just options to show you of possibilities, not necessarily things you're going to want to use all the time. But knowing what exists in there is half the battle. So that's how to do some more advanced text options for you.